Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, Theraflu in hand, and ready to bring to you the 2023 Keep On Listening Awards, the only record award in the universe that matters because it's the only one that's based on actually listening to the records that get the awards. It's a novel concept, isn't it? Anyway, before we begin, I just have to check in because I do this every few years, or maybe we should do it yearly now. I don't know. On Norman Lebrecht. Remember him? Norman Lebrecht is this guy, in case you don't know who he is, who publishes classical music gossip and stuff. And he's kind of like, the weekly world news of classical music. Remember them? You found them in the supermarket and they had stories about the vampire baby and, oil workers drill too deep and Satan escapes from hell and, stories like that. Well, that's Norman. Norman in 2004 published a prediction. The prediction was this. Let me just get his exact words. He wrote, let's see. I am about to make the rock-solid prediction that the year 2004 will be the last for the classical music industry. Yes, that was the prediction. Well, here we are going into 2024, right? 2023, whatever. What year is it? 2023, 2024. So it's 20 years later. 20 years later. And here we are with tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of good recordings, millions of them. Things have changed. There's been more consolidation in the industry. Independent labels have achieved a level of success, which means they could sell themselves to the corporate majors, probably to be, either exploited or destroyed or both. We'll see. And it's just amazing. The stuff keeps coming and coming and coming, and there's no sign of it stopping. Aside from the gargantuan apocalypse that Norman projected, there have been many apocalypti, like the death of physical product. Well, here I am, surrounded by physical product. It's impossible to predict what's going to happen. And what's amazing is just how much impetus there is to still make recordings and release them, given the fact, particularly, that no one can sell anything, theoretically. Something is definitely happening that people aren't picking up on. Anyway, so we can get to the point. Here are the 10 best recordings of 2023, hands down, completely objectively, and without any point in demurring. At least these are really great, and you should all hear them if you have a chance. So number one, these are in no particular order. None whatsoever. They're all equally fabulous, and let's just get that out of the way. Number one, Albéniz, Iberia, with Nelson Goerner piano on alpha. Now, Iberia, as you all know, is one of the pinnacles of the piano repertoire and one of the great romantic tone poems in any medium. It's just an amazing work. And pianists fling themselves at it with varying degrees of success. It's very difficult to compete with the great Spanish pianists who've done it, like Alicia de la Rocha or Esteban Sanchez. Everyone has their faves, but Goerner is just marvelous. It's a beautiful performance. Most of these things were reviewed either at ClassicsToday.com, all of these titles, or here on this channel, so you can look up those original reviews if you're curious. But great recordings of Iberia are few and far between, and this is certainly one of them. It was a thrill to hear, and a little bit unusual in the Alpha catalog, because they don't seem to specialize in that stuff. Alpha, you may recall, began life as like a Baroque label, a Baroque specialty boutique label, and now they're doing all kinds of stuff. They've got what's his name, that Finnish guy, Santu Matthias Ruvali doing Sibelius. They've got, I don't know, because what happened is that they need stuff to issue, and there's tons of money in paying for recordings in advance. There's no money in marketing or sales, but artists make the stuff, and so they have projects. They can get projects and not pay for them. That's how all of this stuff works, by the way. So whether or not, I don't know what the economics was with Iberia, but it's a great recording. So let's start with that. That came out really, I think, at the beginning of this year or the end of last year. So, we're going way back. I keep a running list. as the year goes on of all the juicy stuff, so that when we have to do the KOLA Awards, it's there, and we can encompass the entire span of the past year. Next, something more recent. Rodgers and Hammerstein, Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. Oklahoma, where the waving wheat. Yes, Oklahoma, featuring John Wilson and the Sinfonia of London on Chandos. And a fabulous, fabulous recording of an iconic American musical. Everybody has loved it. Everybody is right. John Wilson seems to make great records and horrible records and very little in between. And he's done some good, like purely orchestral things, but mostly his blockbuster, romantic recordings have been awful. And his theater music and film music and stuff like this has been pretty terrific. And this is great, absolutely great. And I just talked about it recently, so we don't have to go into it in tremendous detail. After Rodgers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma, well, another fairly recent issue, Bruckner Symphony No. 5, with the ORF Vienna Radio Symphony Orchestra and Markus Poschner. Well, this is important. I mean, Poschner's doing all the Bruckner symphonies in all of their versions for Capriccio. And it's been what do you expect? I mean, some have been excellent, like the 8th. Some have been awful, like the 2nd. Nobody's going to be able to do them all. Actually, I think that's a healthy thing. Because people who say that Bruckner wrote the same symphony 9 times and all this stuff, and, it's all the same and blah, 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 turns out it isn't. If it were all the same, someone who did one well would do all of them well. But no, they all have different requirements, different stresses, different formal conniptions that you have to work through. And the 5th is the weirdest Bruckner symphony of all. And if you could do the 5th well, then it's special. It's really special. And he does the 5th well. And he does it like no one else has done it. I mean, it still has the most cogent first movement you've ever heard in your life. A wonderful culmination at the end. It's first class. And I applaud him for getting this far and managing one of the trickiest pieces Bruckner ever wrote with confidence, insight, intelligence, and flair. Yes, Bruckner sometimes had flair. So there you go. Number 4 here. Oh, yes. Ameling, the Phillips recitals. This has kind of been like the year of the mezzo, because we've had the Ameling box, the Janet Baker box. There's a Victoria de Los Angeles box that just came out we'll be talking about. Lots of fabulous mezzo stuff. I actually think that someone should do a recording called The Three Mezzos, where you get like Crystal Ludwig and Ellie Ameling and Janet Baker all doing the same leader. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? Anyway, Ellie Ameling is simply one of the greatest singers that ever existed. She is the epitome of the communicative, natural, unaffected classical song person. She sings beautifully in a zillion languages. She never made a bad record. And she was as great in Bach as she was in Ravel. She's just amazing. And the Ellie Ameling, the Phillips recitals, which is on Decca Eloquence, is a major, major, major release that anyone who cares about great singing really needs to hear. Number 5, Bernard Herrmann, the complete soundtrack to On Dangerous Ground, and The Man Who Knew Too Much, with the Scottish National Orchestra and William T. Stromberg conducting on Intrada. Well, On Dangerous Ground is one of Herrmann's most famous scores because of the orchestral excerpt he took from it, The Death Hunt, with 8 braying horns going completely insane in a steel sheet you whack with a hammer, and oh my goodness, it's exciting. But the whole score, it turns out, is based on the motives used in The Death Hunt, or The Death Hunt is constructed out of motives used in the whole score. But it's hunting music, 6/8, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, hunting music. And it's fabulous that we could get this score done, especially in this day and age when big orchestral projects are hard to come by. And it's just a wonderful release for film music aficionados. And of course, film music generally is one of the great minds of first-class orchestral music, classical orchestral music, potentially. And it sits outside the world of classical music. I mean, there's some bleeding back and forth. People like, John Marcheri and people like that have done things. But the truth is, it deserves to be to be subsumed into the wider world of great orchestral music, because that's what we all listen to, right? You folks have no problem including film music in your listening and in your evaluation of what constitutes great music, and you enjoy it to the hilt. So do I, and it's only the industry that hasn't quite figured that out yet. So there we go. Bernard Herrmann. Number 6, another big box, the Pražák Quartet on Praga. The complete Praga Digitals recordings. What a great box that is. The Pražák Quartet is one of the great string quartets that ever existed. They did all of the usual quartet stuff and some unusual quartet stuff, and they did it fabulously well. I mean, what else is there to say? And that box is one of the great chamber music happenings of the past year. You know, the thing about the chamber music literature with the established ensembles like trios and quartets and whatnot, is that it tends to come in clumps. So when they issue these boxes, you can get the box and effectively get like just about all of the basic repertoire for that formation, because it's not that huge. Well, it's huge if you look at like all the Haydn string quartets or the 100 Boccherini string quartets, but the standard canon of chamber music is very easily boxed up. And if you're a great ensemble, as the Pražák certainly is, beautifully recorded by Praga, that you have all of the makings of an absolutely astounding, stunning, magnificent series of chamber music recordings. And that's what this is. Don't let it slip by. I think it's a limited edition. I forget whether mine had a number on the back of it, but get it while you can, because you really ought to hear it. It's if you care about great chamber music and great quartet playing, the Czech quartets are just marvelous. It's just this great tradition. The Janáček Quartet, the Smetana Quartet, the Pinocha Quartet, the Stamitz Quartet. There's just a whole bunch of them, and they're very, very good. So next, another recent release that I'm so happy that these things come out toward the end. It makes my life easier. We just talked about this one too. Aux Étoiles, 2 discs of French symphonic poems with the Orchestre Nationale de Lyon under Nikolaj Szeps-Znaider. And it's on the Bruzan label. Bruzan is the Palazzetto Bruzan is a foundation. It has lots of money, tons of money. It's a French music foundation that lives in Italy for reasons I don't understand. But they make recordings of French romantic repertoire. Some of you talk about, well, why haven't they done stuff later in the 20th century? I wish they did. But they focus on 19th century repertoire, really in early 20th. So they don't get that far into the 20th century. But they have made stunning recordings of operas and other things in first class packaging and presentation. Just a magnificent repertoire of stuff that we would never have had a chance to hear. And this 2-disc set contains 15 French tone poems, from the very familiar, like The Sorcerer's Apprentice or Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre, to completely unfamiliar stuff by people you've never heard of. And it is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I mean, naturally, the KOLA Awards, because it means keep on listening, right? Focus on unusual repertoire where we can, because there's so much great music that we all haven't heard yet. And it's so boring, I think, to give awards to the same old people doing the same old stuff, when there's so much great music to encounter. So yes, that's definitely one of them. And that's number 7. Number 8, some more fascinating, really fascinating repertoire. Syrian composer Malek Jandali on CD, the CD label, his violin and clarinet concertos, fabulously played with Rachel Barton Pine, violin, and Anthony McGill, clarinet, with the ORF Vienna Radio Symphony Orchestra. These radio orchestras have the money, the funds to make records. So like Pache, Norman Lebrecht, people are finding the angles, the subsidies, the ways to keep making this stuff. Marin Alsop is the conductor, a very fine one, and Jandali is a personal, interesting voice in contemporary classical music. We don't know many Syrian composers. We don't know many composers from that part of the universe. And so I think it's really a discovery. He uses some traditional instruments in his work. The idiom is it's exotic in the sense that, you can sort of get a sense of the location. It has that Eastern flavor, but it's not tacky. he's not writing something that sounds like, a 1950s Samson and Delilah Bible pick or something like that with, or the Dance of the Seven Veils or something like that. It's not going there. But it does have that Eastern Asian kind of influence. The argument itself is powerful and passionate and expressive, and it's really first rate. So I was really happy to encounter his works. There are other recordings of some of his things, and he's worth encountering. John Dolly. I would give that a listen if you haven't. Number 9. Well, okay, here's a same old choice. We have to do some of them if they're fabulous. Tchaikovsky, Symphony Number 5, with the Pittsburgh Symphony and Manfred Honeck. Wow. I mean, to be able to do something really new and really interesting in Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony is to say a lot. I mean, really, it's an extraordinary performance, gorgeously played, spectacularly recorded by reference recordings. I mean, it's everything you want in a remake of a repertoire warhorse. As I've always said, greatness is its own justification. If you're going to do a piece like that and you're going to slam it, then what the heck? And this is Honeck's second recording, by the way, of this work. His first one was on Exton. It was also very good and quite similar. One of the things that's so twisted about the circumstance we're in is that while everyone is moaning and groaning about, the lack of funds and not enough stuff and people aren't making records and the world is dying and the universe is going to hell, you find artists recording the same thing over and over again on big labels with splashy productions, and it's bizarre. How many times you get to do the same thing over and over? But they do. The funds are there. The will is there. The audience, well, we don't know. Maybe not so much. But there you go. A great Tchaik 5. And number 10, last and certainly not least, Vaughan Williams' Job, A Mask for Dancing, with Andrew Mancy, the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic, on Onyx. This was an appendix, a supplement to Mancy's hit-and-miss Vaughan Williams Complete Symphony Cycle. I mean, it was pretty good. It had its pluses and minuses. Mancy, of course, became famous as a period instrument violinist for Harmonia Mundi. Remember his first major recording for that label, the Bieber Violin Sonatas? It was extraordinary. It was the one that had the dead duck and the oil slick, or whatever it was on the cover, the dead bird thing. But he was amazing. He was absolutely amazing. But it fascinates me that so many period instrument artists who, having achieved a level of fame, decide to go into conducting normal music, because the period instrument movement is somewhat limiting and restrictive. However much repertoire exists, tons of it exists, but your opportunities to break out and express the fullest range of your musicality are somewhat limited. Let's not kid ourselves. And Mancy, who did a Brahms cycle on CPO, which was also sort of hit and miss, but who obviously has an impulse to doing bigger things in different media, really deserves a career as a conductor, I think. He's making fine records, and he has ideas, and Job shows what he can do. It's a stunning performance of what many argue to be Vaughan Williams' greatest masterpiece. So there you have it, friends, the 10 KOLA selections for 2023. The Keep On Listening Awards continue because the product continues coming. There are so many opportunities for us to do just that. You can enjoy all of these recordings. I think they're all available. I hope they all stay available, at least for a little while. And I hope you take some time and listen to the ones that you haven't heard and explore what's out there, because boy, oh boy, is there a lot of stuff out there. It's a buyer's market, a listener's market. It may take some doing to source everything, and you may have to decide whether you want physical product or streaming, or what your medium is going to be. But just keep on listening, however you do it. Thank you so much for joining me in 2023. Here's to 2024, which I don't think is going to be the end of classical music, since Norman Lebrecht's prognostication of 20 years ago still hasn't come true. And we're going to just keep on checking, because it's so much fun to find out just how wrong some of these jerks can be who are jaw-jawing about the universe of classical music. We should just, like I said, keep on listening to what comes. It's going to be great. Even if it is the Bruckner year. Trust me, it's going to be great. Take care.